CBS News political contributor Molly Hooper is joining us now with more. Molly, it's supposed to be a really long night. I think with all those absentee ballots, they can process them now, but they can't actually start counting them till the polls close. So a lot of watching and waiting. What are the biggest things that you will be keeping an eye on?
Well, the biggest thing I'm keeping an eye on is how many Republicans actually get out to vote. After we've heard this message sort of from Donald Trump saying that, the election was rigged, that your vote doesn't count, claiming that he won the Georgia election, the challenge will be for Republicans to feel like their vote will matter and that they should, in fact, go to the polls because their vote will count. And that's something that I'm hearing from Republicans in Washington, D.C. There's a concern that with a message like that, you won't see as many Republicans get to the polls. And really, this election down in Georgia is about turnout. Already, something like 3 million voters have already voted early voting, and those votes tend to come from younger, more African-American communities that tend to vote Democrat. So Republicans have a steep hill to climb today to catch up, essentially, and make sure that their votes do count and keep up that record that Caitlin was mentioning of re-electing Republican incumbents in that state.
We spoke to Jamie Harrison earlier at the beginning of the show, and he said, in November, the president was on the ballot, and basically Republican candidates benefited from having President Trump on the ballot in November, but it's totally different for these two incumbents, these Republican incumbents. The president was there yesterday. He said a lot of what you just pointed out, reiterated his claims that he won the election in Georgia, that the election system is messed up in Georgia. I wonder, is the spirit of the president on the ballot in many ways? And you touched a little bit on the impact that could have on Republican voters. What about Democratic voters?
See, that's a very good question, too, and something I'll also be watching, Anne-Marie. Thank you for reminding me. Because, Donald Trump is not on the ballot. Perhaps the spirit is, but, the spirit can be a little different than the actual individual because so many people we saw were motivated to get to the polls because they did not support Trump and they wanted to vote against him. At least that's what we've seen from various exit polls and whatnot. So you're right, that is a big deal. But again, as I said, about 3 million people have already gone to the polls, and Democrats are largely seeing that as a good sign. But in terms of actually getting voters to the polls, typically, historically, it is more difficult to get voters to vote, in these runoff elections. But as Caitlin reported, so much money has been spent in Georgia over the past month and a half. So many incumbents have gone down there. Possible potential presidential candidates in 2024 have been down there. People like Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, big names in the Republican Party, as well as big names in the Democratic Party. And I think it will be fascinating to watch just how the message will resonate of, if we don't, for Republicans, if we don't elect these Republicans, then the Senate will go Democratic. Because Kamala Harris will essentially cast that tie-breaking vote if two Democrats pick up those seats. So I think there's quite a bit going on here. There's a lot of spirits going on. The spirit of the Senate, well, actually, it's the reality of the Senate, but the spirit of the president being on the ballot, and the fact that he did come out last night and rally supporters in Northwest Georgia. That's a key area for conservatives and an area that needs, at least Republicans feel, to be a little energized before today.
President-elect Biden was also there. Who was he speaking to? Who are the voters he's trying to get out? The Democrats need both wins. So both candidates, I was thinking of them as like a sort of Siamese twin candidates because they both need to sort of nail this to make a difference for the Democrats.
Right. And actually what's so fascinating about this race, and something that we don't see in other Senate races, we have two candidates of two parties up for election, essentially up for re-election or up for election this year. And in this race, you normally don't have two Senate candidates in the same state up for election at the same time. So this is kind of an interesting election in that that basically the Democrats can campaign together, as we saw John Ossoff saying, Democrats are really motivating individuals to get to the polls because there's two Democrats on the ballot. And When Joe Biden was down there yesterday, his message was, "Listen, we need these two Democratic wins in order to essentially give Democrats the Senate, and so we can take bold action on a health care agenda, so that we can get more money back to the people and to the states and local governments following the coronavirus. Public health is on the ballot." So again, seeing how that message resonates with Democratic voters and if it motivates them to get to the polls will be extremely key in deciding what happens today.
Yep, Molly, great to have you. I know we'll be checking in with you periodically as the day unfolds. Thank you so much.
Thank you.